Welcome to the Social Spitball Show with your host, Bram Sarkowski. This is your forum to discuss politics, religion, democracy, and sometimes even music, sports, and culture. Please join Bram and your co-host, Barbara D. Let's get the conversation going. Hello, folks. This is your man in Amsterdam, Bram Sarkowski, again with you on a Sunday evening for another set of great interviews with great guests, as we have done in the past. And a special thanks goes out to Barry Sensa, Robin Conrad, and Crystal Stevens, the liberal kitty, for helping to make this show a success and for helping us schedule the wonderful guests we have on tonight. Speaking of which, first up we have Dr. Brenda Cleary, who is one of three great Democratic candidates for Congress in North Carolina's 13th District. She is running to get the nomination to defeat George Holding, who was caught snoozing at the helm of a session of Congress during the government shutdown. So obviously he's a congressman that needs to go, in my opinion. And Dr. Brenda Cleary is one of those candidates. Welcome, Dr. Cleary. How are you doing?
I'm here and doing fine. Thank you for having me, Bram.
It's quite an honor to have you on the show. Had the pleasure of seeing you and your husband yesterday on a long day for, I'm sure, you and him and us as well. Barbara D. was traveling with me around the eastern North Carolina. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. I didn't have that on the list of questions I sent you, but do tell me a little bit about your history, how you came to call North Carolina home and where you're coming from.
Okay. Well, I grew up in rural southern Indiana and was a dean of nursing in Texas and was recruited following a national search to lead a nursing workforce center in North Carolina that was affiliated with UNC General Administration. So we have been proud North Carolinians for 20 years, and we actually have a plaque in our master bedroom that says we weren't born here, but we got here as quick as we could, and this is our home forever.
Awesome.
So, and again, as a registered nurse, my doctoral work was in geriatrics.
Okay, and that's how we come to call you Dr. Cleary today. And so that's a little bit about you, and we'll get a chance for you to tell a little bit more about your family as well later in your segment. But tell us a little bit about the district you're running in, the 13th district. What do the demographics look like? What have you encountered? Is it mostly rural? Is it mostly urban? How many counties are there, and what are you looking at when you make your way around the district?
Yes, the district is approaching 800,000 population if you look at the updates since the 2010 census, with just over 500,000 registered voters. Interestingly, over 4,000 of them are registered Democrats, with 178,000 registered Republicans, and there's growing unaffiliated, which is a trend around North Carolina, and they stand at 128,000. It's pretty average in terms of ethnicity and, the fact that females just slightly outnumber males. But there's some really interesting things. Probably the most interesting thing that I found in the demographics is a data point about age. And the thing that sticks out is in this district, the under 20 are 28%, but
wow.
The 20 to 34 are 17%, and that tells a rural story where we have heard this on the campaign trail. A man from Vance County said with just a troubled voice that his family had been in Vance County for years, but he had to advise his son to move on because he could not make a living wage there. That's really tragic. So our rural areas. And the district is mostly rural because a lot of the municipalities have been cut out of the district. So it's a big, diverse district, and there's a lot of variation in terms of socioeconomic status. So there's 7.8% employment district-wide, but that reflects, in Wake County there's really high employment, and so it really is skewed, and there's too many people without jobs.
That's true, and that's the problem, obviously nationwide and across the state. But yeah, in the rural, you're right about the rural counties. It's difficult for a young person to be starting out And in fact, I'm in Wilson County now. I may find myself leaving Wilson County soon so that I can find gainful employment myself. So just a bit of a personal touch for me. Thinking about making your way around the district, and you brought up some of the issues, unemployment and just some economic issues. What sort of issues of concern are you hearing from the potential constituents, the voters in the district, and also what concerns you most, and how do they match up?
Well, we will have been in all 9 counties in the district before the primary, attending at least one event and actually doing some canvassing. And the jury's kind of in. The overwhelmingly the voters that we ask them about issues of greatest concern, and the economy with its uneven recovery and the growing income equality top the list. So that's going to be one of my first priorities, and people want us to raise the minimum wage so that people can make a living wage. To me, that's an early starter. We may have to go dip into some things more controversial, whether that includes a cost of living adjustment, so that that it will continue to be a living wage. So I will really, that's one of the issues that concerns me and that I intend to work on early on, and other areas of inequality as well. I also, because of the background I bring, I will be a strong advocate for an aging population through efforts to sustain Social Security and Medicare. The good news about Medicare is that it is already more sustainable because of the Affordable Care Act. We're providing more benefits, but we're reining in cost in places where there was fraud and abuse, and where we were doing everything, just not doing the right thing to make people get better. So those are really important to me. And healthcare and education in general, people are talking about, and so those two things that I think should be, basic, essential human services. I'll be really interested in being a force for good there.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's in my opinion, that's two of the big three that people are really concerned about right now. The third one is education. And now, obviously, as a member of Congress, as a congresswoman, you won't have much direct influence in what's going on here in North Carolina, but obviously you're aware of what the General Assembly has done. They've eliminated tenure. They've cut the public education budget down, eliminating teacher and teaching assistant jobs. So we understand it's mainly a state issue, but there are things that Congress can do to ensure that there's a strong public education system available in terms of funding at least. What would you advocate for in Congress to help public education here?
Well, because I am such a strong believer in teachers that change lives every day, I will do what I can in Washington from that perspective to fight for them. One thing that I have thought about is a national campaign to raise awareness of the difference teachers make each and every day. I mean, we have personal stories of that, but a real national awareness campaign that says we got to do better by our teachers. It would be similar to initiatives I have led on behalf of the nursing profession at both the state and national level. I think incentives to move Common Core standards along will actually make it easier for our great teachers to prepare students with the basic skills needed for the 21st century workplace, and also to help students be prepared for the pursuit of higher education and a path toward upward mobility. So I'm
right.
Yeah, and most states have approved these. We've been having a debate in North Carolina, but I actually think I've never been a public school teacher, but I've been an educator, and usually if there's some core standards, you have something to work with, and that has some kind of evidence behind it.
That makes sense. That's fair enough. Let me bring in my co-host Barbara D. And you know her well, or at least a little bit from the campaign trail, and let me bring her in to ask you a couple questions herself. Thank you very much, Dr. Cleary.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, how you doing, Brenda? It was a long day yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah. For probably longer for you since you were traveling all around. Yeah, we just had a couple places to go.
Yeah, but you know what? I felt good when I got home. I felt like, democracy was at work.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. Good democracy, I guess I should say. I wanted to ask you a question about the military and how it seems like Congress has not been taking very good care of our veterans and their families. They've shut down the government, which, of course, furloughed many active military, and I actually have relatives that were affected by that. They've cut the benefits for the active military, veterans, their families. What would you do to stand up for our veterans and their families in Congress, especially since North Carolina has so many veterans and military people?
Well, first of all, Barbara, I've also had relatives in the military, but I also started my career as a VA nurse. So I have always had a soft spot for veterans who put their lives on the line for our country. And I'm very concerned about the backlog on their benefits. I'm very concerned about rising unemployment among veterans and even growing homelessness. So I feel like as we can hopefully scale down war efforts, and I know there's still troubled spots around the world, but we should use some of those resources to actually put toward addressing the backlog and also investing in programs that help veterans recover both in terms of their physical and their mental health, so that they can, enjoy the life that they so deserve after being put in harm's way and protecting the rest of us.
Right. Would you support better mental health care for our veterans and even our military people, since we have seen the effects of not getting the mental health care that they need?
That's why I was stressing that we need to help them recover both in their physical health needs and their mental health needs. And I just recently learned that there's a movement to look at model mental health programs for the whole population and try to pattern veterans programs after that. Veterans have some special needs, but I think there could be models that could actually be used from the nonprofit sector as well.
Right. In your geriatric care, did you have a lot of veterans? Was that? I know you said you worked at the VA hospital, but in your recent, since you got your degree and all that, did you specialize in that or have any knowledge of, I guess you would say, Korean War veterans, World War II even?
I have taken care of veterans from both of those wars, and the Vietnam War as well. That's kind of when I came of age, and I had friends there, but also that was when I worked at the VA, and we didn't label it post-traumatic stress disorder, but I saw, those were mostly young men. I'll get back to the geriatrics, just reliving the horrors of war. Sometimes a lot of times I work nights, and if it wasn't really busy, I'd just sit by the bedside of these young men. So in terms of older veterans, I've served a lot of older veterans, even in nursing homes, because most of my service has been in long-term care. There are veterans there that are getting their veteran benefits are helping them to get care. And the VA system has a lot of long-term care facilities itself. So, those and I enjoy those people. And it's interesting. Something really important about how significant this is. My research and most of my practice has been focused on dementia care because it's a growing problem. But veterans who had, at a ripe old age developed memory problems would never forget their stories of serving. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah, that was always a great way to build a relationship with them by asking them about their time in the service.
That's interesting. I also have a little bit of a background in nursing home care and the dietary part, and I think everybody needs to work in a nursing home, at least for a couple of weeks. If you are elected and you go to Congress, and we hope that we get the best candidate. You're going to be dealing with the Ukraine, Russia, Crimea, all the parts of the world, because, as we know, our Congress makes a lot of decisions. How would you react to a situation where the U.S. might be getting drawn into a situation with a country? Do you want another Cold War, or do you think that it would be a full-fledged war?
Well, first, I think that we should prevail with considering the lessons learned from Cold War years and recent conflicts. And I'd be the first to say, I think I would bring a lot of expertise to Congress, but I don't consider myself a foreign affairs expert. I think every person in Congress should be generous with sharing their expertise in order to shed light on tough issues, and also on issues where the other people are more experts, to thoughtfully consider all options they put on the table. And this is one of those things. It's a catch-22. Whatever you do, so I don't want us to enter into another conflict swiftly, and I hope we're able to resolve it without doing that.
Okay. You touched a little bit on health care, Affordable Care Act. What is your opinion of the Affordable Care Act? And since, as you well know, and I'm sure you've been to the Moral Mondays, our state has not expanded the Medicaid. Do you have any suggestions, ideas that would expand the Medicaid in a different way so that we can get these millions of people, 500,000 in our state, covered? Is there anything that you've heard of or anything that you might want to pass along to us?
Some people call me brave and some people call me crazy, but I have never in my support of the Affordable Care Act. I just want to say a couple words about that, and then I'll move to Medicaid expansion, which was a dreadful decision by our state. But because it addresses so many problems in our healthcare system prior to its passage, especially lack of coverage and access for millions of Americans. But the Medicaid issue is still keeping the most vulnerable out. So
right.
But also there were quality issues and runaway costs. I don't know if you know this fact, but when we were spending twice as much as any other nation, World Health Organization that ranks countries in terms of actual health outcomes ranked the U.S. 37th. And I just want to make a thing that those measures reflected a lack of compassion for people left out, and also represented a failed business model with an unacceptable return on investment. So I'm speaking out. We can't go back to what we had. It's just not sustainable. And I actually, as a volunteer, talked to a few people on the phone who had recently gotten coverage, and I wish the naysayers would listen to these calls. They are very, very touching. So I will use I have a deep knowledge of the Affordable Care Act and use it in constructive ways in Washington. But in terms of Medicaid, it is, the Supreme Court ruled that it was a state-by-state decision. But I'm going to go with some optimism that we can actually maybe provide some pressure for Washington. People in Washington always talk about carrots and sticks, positive things. But and I try to start that way. So I would really start a conversation about, states choose, but are there other ways, other than the incentives they already have, which are many, that we could incentivize states to reconsider their decision not to expand Medicaid. And, of course, I would be focusing on my own state, in terms of an example. I just
Amendment 1, I don't know how involved or uninvolved you were 2 years ago in the May primary, but I just wondered what your feelings were on marriage equality, and should marriage equality be legalized nationwide? Is it becoming, a problem where each state and person moves and it's not in effect? And what are your stands on marriage equality?
I don't believe in keeping anyone from being with the person they love and having the same rights and benefits that the rest of us have. So that's just a value that I have. And really, I think that the amendment we passed, I talked to a lot of people about it, and I said, don't vote for this amendment because it's the constitutional amendment, and that's exactly
right.
what I thought of it. And so I'm very, very much for equal rights to marriage, and the Supreme Court needs to uphold our Constitution. But there's been some progress, because when they struck down DOMA, that was a start, and so we're hoping that we can rely on them to continue to move this forward and question these state acts as unconstitutional.
Okay, thank you. The current incumbent, Representative George Holding, has a bank full of money. He can call upon his family's wealth. We know that he's related to the Holdings who founded the First Citizens Bank. How are you going to compete with and defeat Representative George Holding, also known as Sleepyhead?
Well, I will not, based on principle, attack Mr. Holding personally, but I think there's a lot in his voting record that deserves being attacked head-on, simply because it doesn't serve the people of District 13. So that's a position or a strategic position I would work from. But also I will defeat him by continuing grassroots fundraising with confidence that if I move to the general election, some bigger donors will add their support. And then it's all about having some good data and having a much stronger ground game. Remember President Obama, these are things he had, and I want to emulate that. And my campaign chair was his headquarters in Cary during his, so she can help me. All
right.
And a stronger ground game will also focus on getting people out to vote. And we all know that's really the most important thing, because we can win if we get our Democrats and independents out to vote who really realize that extremism is not getting us anywhere.
Right.
Right.
Dr. Cleary, let me jump in and sort of roll back a little bit. First of all, I wanted to thank you for your addressing the Medicaid issue. I don't know if you know, that's very personal for me. I'm one of those ones that fell in the gap, making too much to qualify for Medicaid and too little to get the surplus. So your answer to that was very appreciated by someone who is in that category. So thank you for that. But moving on to something sort of, I was interested to get your take on this, because it can be medical related. I wanted to go back to it, sort of another hot social topic, or some people call it a hot social topic. But this year the Super Bowl was between the Broncos and the Seahawks, and they're from Colorado and state of Washington, and those are two states that recently legalized marijuana. What is your stance on the legalization of marijuana? Would you go so far as to maybe stand for a federal legalization, or would you be a more moderate decriminalization of marijuana?
Well, to me, the decriminalization is a no-brainer. That's an easy lift, and I position on federal legislation. I think the wisest approach is, we've got we have some pilot states, and that's always a good way to kind of see how things work and if they help the people. And so I think the wisest approach is watchful waiting to assess both the benefit of legalization of marijuana and to also determine if there are any serious unintended consequences. So that's my position on both of those questions.
Okay. Well, fair enough. And I will defer to Barbara D. for another question.
You're in a three-way primary, and we're so glad to have three good Democrats out there running for this position. What makes you stand out from them to the potential voters? You know, what's going to make you be the candidate for the Democrats?
Well, I always say, I don't say I'm running against, I always say I'm running alongside two other good people. But I think that what makes me stand out is that I would be the most likely to hit the ground running in Washington. I have a very strong public policy background, fully honed as a director in the ARP Public Policy Institute, where I had access to just amazing policy minds. But I've also myself spent a lot of time on the Hill in an advocacy role and gotten to know many of the players there, which will help, orient me pretty quickly. Other important things I bring to the table are having been a healthcare provider and an educator, a great deal of leadership training and experience, and something we're facing right now and that we have buried our heads in the sand is between now and the middle of this century an aging population, and I will be helpful in meeting the needs of an aging society and trying to get my colleagues there to wake up and say, you know what, this will be much easier for aging people and for society in general if we plan ahead and try to get something going on that. I just want to say, if I might, one more thing. I actually consider myself an ordinary person who was able to do some extraordinary things with the support of family, friends, teachers, and spirituals, and then a great education that opened doors for me and helped me become a member of the middle class. And I really sincerely want that amazing path to be available to all North Carolinians and all Americans, and I think the sincerity of that will help me in Washington to consider policy thoughtfully and make sure there's very few losers in the policy process.
Okay. Sounds like Excellent. You're pretty thorough there on that. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Bram.
Oh, yeah. Just wanted to allude back to what I said earlier. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about your family, because you just mentioned you're middle class, like a lot of the voters in your district, and maybe some of the voters might want to hear a little bit more about your family and about you personally.
Well, I have had a long career in nursing and specifically focusing on aging. Before I entered this campaign, I was actually a consultant, an elder care consultant in policy and elder care, and now I finished one big project, and I'm not taking too many right now, because you all know that campaigning is more than a full-time job.
Right.
But I am very fortunate to have two sons. My older son is an orthopedic surgeon in the Charlotte area. We feel that will come in handy because, eventually our joints will wear out. And also, he's the favored son now because he and his wife produced our first grandbaby. And then I have a younger son who is a data researcher. He's been at MIT, but he's now launching his own company. And he's been good on this campaign because he's a great data person to lean on. That helps. We're very proud of our son, and that we always tell everyone that we know that they'll be successful, but the most important thing to us is they are really good people, and that's what makes us both proud.
Well, that is a wonderful answer. And speaking as a son who's working on a campaign for his mom, my mom's running for North Carolina House. I think that really speaks to the voters, and that certainly is something that they wanted to hear. So thank you for sharing that. And now, of course, we extend the courtesy to every candidate that we have on our show to be able to tell them how they can get out the vote for you, how they can volunteer, how they can donate to your campaign, because obviously you have to pay for signs and literature and things like that. And just in general, how they can help you.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, it's most of this can be done through my website, although I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. But the website, the official website, is www.clearyforcongress.com. Okay. There happens to be a donate button on every page with the opportunity to donate through a secure connection to Act Blue, and also instructions on how to donate by check. Folks out there can use the volunteer button on the website to sign up for canvassing or making phone calls or placing yard signs, or you can contact me directly from the website. As of early voting, like I said before, I will have been to all the 9 counties, but this is a really big district. And so with the caveat, we know we couldn't get to everybody. But if given the opportunity in the general election, we'll continue this quest, even if we never reach it, to get to everybody, because everybody counts. And I will just close with, I believe I have what it takes to do this, and you have something very precious that I need, and that's your vote.
Well, that says it right there. And like y'all said before, getting out the vote is probably the most important thing. And on top of that is you asking for the vote. So thank you, Dr. Cleary. It's an honor to have you on. I will invite you to hang around if you have the time. I understand you may not, but we will be discussing religion if you want to listen in or weigh in, and that'll be at the end of the show. So, but thank you for being on the show, and we will be right back after a break. So thank you, Dr. Cleary, and I hope you have a good evening.
You can drop the doctor, okay? And I will listen.
I was gonna say thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, there you go, Barbara.
Once you get to know me, you know that I always use the title until I'm told otherwise. So thank you, Brenda, for being on the show.
Yeah. Well, we're at the stage where you can just call me Brenda, okay?
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.